Hello, welcome to Just the Dis YouTube channel where I talk about Blu-rays. I'm Brian. So as I said, I'm definitely going to do more of these label-centric things, some favorites, underrated selections, I don't know, stuff like that. For this group, I'm just calling them favorites because that's what they are. I've got 5 Criterion Blu-rays that represent stuff that I like a lot. And let me get right into it here, okay? First up, we have Island of Lost Souls. This is a classic film. It's the first version of the Island of Dr. Moreau story, or don't quote me on that. Maybe it's not the first version, but one of many. I think the best, and it stars Charles Laughton in the Dr. Moreau role, and he's pretty creepy. And basically, you have a guy gets stranded on his island, and he tries to get him to mate with his jaguar woman, and Bela Lugosi is like an ape man, and he has a really famous line that I'm not going to say. It's creepy and effective, and I've always thought should be talked about and considered in the same conversation as the Universal horror classics, the Frankensteins, the Draculas, Creatures from the Black Lagoon. I think this movie should be right in there with them, and I love it. And it was another one that if it had a DVD, it was pretty hard to get, and so it was VHS only for a long time. And I love it when the first Blu-ray of a movie is a Criterion. Like, you can't really ask for anything more than that. So it's a new digital restoration of the uncut theatrical version, audio commentary featuring Gregory Mank, new conversation between filmmaker John Landis and Rick Baker and Bob Burns, new interview with horror and film historian David J. Skal, filmmaker Richard Stanley, the director of the ill-fated 1996 adaptation. But I like this one a lot. 1932, it's only 70 minutes. That's another thing I look for these days. How long is the movie? Is it less than 90 minutes? I'm in. So, really good stuff. One of my favorites, Island of Lost Souls. Next, we have a little something called Matewan. This is a John Sayles film from 1987, and it is, as most of his films, is written and directed by him. It's about the West Virginia coal miners' struggle to form a union, and Matewan was one of the, literal battlegrounds for the union and anti-union people. And so you have basically a guy come into this small town. Chris Cooper is the guy, and it's a really good early Chris Cooper role. If you like him, he was in a few John Sayles films. Obviously, Lone Star. I want to say he was in maybe City of Hope, but I'm probably misremembering that. But he has a lot of good early work with Sayles. But anyway, so this is just a really interesting, slow build kind of drama. And I mean, if you look it up historically, there was a massacre at Matewan, a giant fight, if you will. I'm not going to say too much more than that. It kind of builds to that kind of thing. But the tension is really great. The acting is great. The characters are fantastic. It's John Sayles. I mean, it's one of the best things he ever did. And I feel like it's one that gets slept on a little bit. It also had a tricky track record because it was on DVD from, I want to say, Artisan, and it went out of print, and then you couldn't see it for years, and it wasn't available streaming for a long time, so it was just kind of like the missing John Sayles movie. But this is a really great release. The movie was shot by Haskell Wexler, so it looks fantastic, and I think he's involved in the extras. Yeah, audio commentary from 2013 featuring Sayles and Haskell Wexler, and 2 new documentaries on the making of the film, featuring sales, producer Maggie Renzi, production designer, actors. Oh, it also has, of course, an incredible supporting cast. James Earl Jones, Mary McDonnell, Will Oldham, David Strathairn. He's on the cover there. David Strathairn is great, and I think he's really fantastic in this movie. He's sort of like the Law of Matewan, and it gets sort of sucked into this conflict, and it's a great tense movie. I mean, basically the union busters kind of move in on the town, and they're very aggressive and very bad people, and it's clear that they're ready to go to considerable lengths to stop this union stuff from happening. And so that tension just kind of escalates throughout, and it's just a really killer ending, and love this movie. Matewan. All right, moving along. We have Lady Eve from Preston Sturges, one of my favorite classic Hollywood era filmmakers. He also obviously did Sullivan's Travels, which is in the collection, and I have that over there. Palm Beach Story, which I also have. Those are great. I've recently come to appreciate Christmas in July quite a bit with Dick Powell. Kino put that one out on Blu-ray, and I rewatched it, and I was like, wow, this is way better than I remember. It's actually one of my favorite Preston Sturges. Anyway, this is my favorite Preston Sturges. Story of a kind of a rube guy played by Henry Fonda, whose dad owns like this incredible brewery. They make this beer called Pike's Pale, the ale that won for Yale. And so he's coming out of the Amazon. He's into snakes, and he gets picked up by this riverboat. And on the riverboat are a trio of card sharps, hustlers. 2 of them played by Barbara Stanwyck, and then her father figure is played by Charles Coburn. And they sort of get a beat on him. They see him as an easy mark, and they start to begin to con him. And it becomes one of those things where, I know it sounds cliched now, but she starts to fall for him, and it kind of goes from there. But where it goes, you never would really necessarily be able to expect. I mean, certain things you would, but I kind of like the last act of the movie, because you always have that, like, oh, she's lying to him. The moment she tells him, he'll never want to talk to her again, and it'll be so hard for them to get back together. And this movie does some of those things, but it kind of turns some of them on their heads. But Preston Sturges' dialogue is amazing. There's so much funny stuff in this, and there's so many clever scenes. There's some great like card playing scenes in this movie. I won't go into detail, but it's truly funny and adorable and romantic, and this is an upgrade I was waiting for a long time. This was only on Criterion DVD forever, but it's got a new 4K restored digital transfer, and they ported over a lot of the extras from the DVD, commentary with film scholar Marion Keene, introduction from Bogdanovich, and then there's a new conversation with Preston Sturges' biographer and his son Tom Sturges, Bogdanovich, filmmakers James L. Brooks and Ron Shelton, and critics Susan King and Leonard Maltin and Kenneth Turan. It's like a Zoom call kind of panel, but those are all really cool people, and they have a lot of great things to say about Preston Sturges, so that's a nice little extra. Anyway, I gotta move on, but good stuff. I love me some Preston Sturges, and I could do with all his films in the Criterion collection that are left. Anything else they want to put out, but this is my favorite. All right, now we have a little paranoid thriller, Klute, Alan J. Pakula, part of maybe a trilogy of paranoid films from the 1970s. This is the first of 3. He would go on to do The Parallax View, which I love, which is maybe my favorite of the 3. And then after that, I think he does All the President's Men. And those are some of the great paranoid thrillers of the 70s. But what's interesting about this one, it's like a businessman who goes missing, and Donald Sutherland is a detective that sort of, I want to say he involves himself in the case. I'm not sure if he's actually assigned to it. And so they go looking for the guy, and the last known person to be in contact with him was this call girl named Bree Daniels, played by Jane Fonda, for which she, I believe, won an Oscar. And she's really good. And there's some really interesting stuff in the extras about how she prepped for the character. Like, she lived in the apartment set for a while, and she stocked a refrigerator and just did some method stuff that's intriguing. But it's really a thriller, and it becomes more of a thriller once Donald Sutherland gets involved and meets her. You start to notice maybe there's somebody watching them, somebody that doesn't want anything to be found out about that guy that disappeared. And there's some really incredibly mysterious and almost scary, unsettling scenes where they realize they're being watched. And there's lots of those great, somebody's watching us kind of shots. And it's shot by Gordon Willis, who obviously shot The Godfather. And I want to say that Gordon Willis had this effect on Alan Pakula and sort of set him off in the direction to make, the other films, because he worked with him some more. And this is, one of Pakula's very early efforts. And it's so strong considering how early in his career it is, and so assured that you got to think that Gordon Willis definitely helped out, at least in terms of the stylistics, because there's some incredible shots where it's total darkness in one side of the frame. There's one that I love where Donald Sutherland's coming up in an elevator, and the elevator's in like one corner of the frame, and it's coming up, and so it's sliding across the frame as it comes up because it's at an angle. And the darkness of the frame, it's Gordon Willis, I think they called him the Prince of Darkness. He had a confidence about shooting things dark, and he really does a heck of a job with this movie. And I didn't realize quite how good it looked until I saw it on this Blu-ray, because this looks pretty fantastic. It has a new 4K digital transfer supervised by camera operator Michael Chapman, who's no slouch, who go on to shoot some pretty great movies himself. I think Taxi Driver and some others. So I think the Gordon Willis influence can be felt radiating from this movie, which I love. There's a new interview with actor Jane Fonda conducted by actor Ileana Douglas. That's great. Really good feature. And then a new program about Clute and director Alan J. Pakula by filmmaker Matthew Millay, featuring interviews with film scholar Annette Insdorf, filmmaker Steven Soderbergh, actor Charles Ciaffi, along with archival interviews with Pakula. And there's more. This is a really nice disc. Highly recommended. Just a really great paranoid thriller, like kind of the one that The Mold was set from, in my mind. Clute. And lastly, this one's a little more well-known in some circles, The Brood. David Cronenberg's film The Brood from 1979. Probably my favorite Cronenberg film. He has notoriously said that this movie is about and rooted in the divorce that he was going through. He's called it his Kramer versus Kramer, which is pretty messed up, but you can totally see how that lines up when you think about it. It's about a man he's separated from his wife, and she's going through this really special psychoplasmics therapy where there's a lot of sort of acting out and role playing, and she sort of ends up birthing these little sort of dwarf-like creatures, and I don't want to give away too much, but they mess some people up, and we'll kind of leave it at that. But his daughter's involved, and it's a pretty great, scary movie in terms of the monsters, if you will, and just the psychological terror of it all. And there's a really incredible scene near the end with Oliver Reed in a bunkhouse. Not going to say anything else about that scene, but there's like something going on concurrently that's affecting his situation, and it plays out really great. But this one is just fantastic, and I was so excited this got a Criterion Blu-ray release. This is just an old VHS favorite of mine. It's let's see here. It's got a new documentary about the making of the film and Cronenberg's early work, featuring actor Samantha Egger, executive producer Pierre David, cinematographer Mark Irwin, assistant director John Board, and special makeup effects artist Rick Baker, and Joe Blasco. Let's see here. New restored 4K digital transfer of Cronenberg's 1970 feature, Crimes of the Future. And then a 2011 interview with Cronenberg about his early career. An interview from 2013 with actors Art Hindle, who's like the main dad character in this movie. Let's see. Appearance by actor Oliver Reed on The Merv Griffin Show from 1980. Priceless, I'm telling you. Yeah, it's really a great release for one of my favorite horror movies. If you haven't seen it, definitely put it on your October watch list. It's quite memorable. So that's it for this first group of Criterion favorites. I will do probably many more of these, of multiple labels, because I can go on and on. But thank you for watching this one. Bye-bye.